guys, it's Maggie, and I wanted to do a little Facebook Live today about a topic that's been kind of bouncing around in my head. Now, if you are watching this live, I'd love to see some comments below to see how this is going to be engaging with you. I think it'd be really awesome. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk about basically why you need to take a blowtorch to your calendar. And that might sound a little dramatic as to, that's a little intense. Why am I taking a blowtorch to my calendar? I've, tried making my calendar so organized. I've tried putting all these, productivity systems in place and systems and setups and just, I've worked so hard to get my calendar strong. Why do I need to take a blowtorch to my calendar? Well, I want to start off before answering that question with a little story. Now, if you're not local and you're not in Florida, regardless of where you're watching this, about a couple weeks ago, we had a pretty big hurricane come through our area. Thank God Hurricane Irma was totally fine, and we were one of the lucky areas that really didn't get affected other than some, water and some wind. So we were really, really lucky. But during that time of dealing with Hurricane Irma, I was physically and, digitally completely unplugged. I had no internet. I didn't have cell phone for a couple days. I had no power for a couple days. So just a quick tip, if you're going to do hurricane prepping, make sure you take your freezer and your fridge and you crank it as cold as you can a couple days ahead of time. All your stuff in your freezer and your fridge will last much longer. So that was something that kind of saved our groceries, which I was really grateful for. But during that time frame of being in Hurricane Irma and experiencing it and experiencing getting our business ready, our motorcycle shop, getting our digital lives kind of cleaned up, making sure we had enough cash on hand if there was an emergency we had to leave, packing everything, helping pack my parents. It was a hot mess. It was the equivalent of taking a blowtorch to my calendar, because all of a sudden, regardless that we didn't know that this was going to be happening, post the hurricane, there was something that was bigger and more important in my life that everything had to stop. Everything had to grind to a halt. All my excuses, all my, wishy-washiness, all my bad habits, they had to go. There was no room for them. So during the hurricane, as I am always apt to do because I like to look at the positive side of things, I tried looking at it as a learning opportunity, because what else could I do? I couldn't read, I couldn't go on Facebook, I couldn't go on Pinterest, I didn't want to use whatever juice I had on my phone, because what if I needed to make an emergency call or something like that? So I stayed off my phone as much as possible, which totally sucked. But again, I tried looking at it as a positive experience, and I said, what can I learn from this? And Hurricane Irma basically told me and taught me I needed to take a blowtorch to my calendar. So what I mean by taking a blowtorch to my calendar is I needed to kind of be forcefully removed from my life and my patterns and my habits while still at home to see what was working and what wasn't working for me. Now, I have been there, and you've probably been there too. You've gone on a badass vacation, you go on a cruise, you go away with the hubby, you go away with the wife, and you have this great time, you're completely disconnected, you feel so excited and so refreshed, and you're like, oh my God, I can't wait to implement X, Y, and Z when I go home. Well, what normally happens is for a week or two, you start implementing some of that stuff, and you start doing some of the habits that you have planned about doing in your vacation, but in reality, it really doesn't translate normally into your everyday life. And one of the reasons why I think that it really has a hard time of taking a new habit that you've thought of outside of your everyday life and translating into an everyday habit inside your everyday life is because you already have all of these obligations in your calendar. Now, you may say, oh, well, my calendar is really not that. It's packed. I go to work, I commute, I come home, and I take care of my home life. Well, your calendar, for me, is a metaphorical stand-in for how we schedule and look at our day. And Kate Northrup, I'll make sure to put some links in the show notes. Kate Northrup has some great resources and tools as to how to look at your energy, whether you're a female or a male, to make sure that you're using, whatever natural energy you have anyway, so that you're capitalizing on that natural energy versus feeling like you're fighting against the grain. But when I'm talking about taking that blowtorch to your calendar, that is a way for you to step back in your everyday life. You don't have to go on a vacation for this, but to step back in your everyday life and just go ahead and see what is not working. What dreams are you always talking about but it never comes true? What desires are you always talking about, but it never happens? Do you plan on becoming like this badass chef, but you never even take the time to go grocery shopping, let alone practice cooking really amazing meals? So, little examples like that, that is what I'm talking about with, what is not working in your life. Are you not having enough downtime? Are you not having enough self-care time? I've talked about this in the past, and there's been definitely posts throughout my social media accounts about self-care and how I'm learning to make that as a priority for myself. But even I've had issue with self-care. So I want you to go ahead and take a moment and just kind of think, what is not working in my life? What feels cluttered? What obligations do I feel like I have to take care of, but I'm not really enjoying? I'm not having fun. And I just wish, another way to think of it is, think of it as, if you have a feeling when you're dealing with an obligation, if I could have more time, if I could have more space, or you even have the feeling of, we have to do this again, that is something that is a clear signal of, this is what is not working in my life. So I just want you to take a moment, and if you can, bust out a piece of paper and a pen and write down a quick list of things that aren't working for you. Now, I've got my little notebook here, and I have a little list of things that aren't working for me, so I'll give you some examples while you're thinking. So some of the things that really didn't work for me was expecting that I had to have previous existing obligations take a lot of time. So another way to explain that would be bookkeeping for a motorcycle shop. We have bookkeeping services and all of that, but I do a lot of some of the work as well. So I had this scenario in my head that it had to take 4, 5, 6, 7 hours, and it had to be a couple times a month, and it was this giant process, and oh my God, all this paperwork, yada, yada, yada. When in reality, I was just not putting the appropriate steps in place to make it seamless, to make it easy, to get it once and done, and to putting some systems in place so that it could get over with, because it's something I'm going to have to do every month anyway, so why not make it as easy as possible to get it over with? So that's an example of a clutter or an obligation in your life that you can need to tweak or clean up. Another one is something that I've been doing because of some of my mastermind groups I belong to, is learning how to outsource. And it's not even just learning how to outsource. So for example, learning how to outsource some of the animal food that we buy. I have it on a monthly subscription. It shows up to my door every single month. I know what I need for the month, and life moves on. It happens regardless of if I am there or not. So that's another way of outsourcing. Now, if you are, here's another example. If you're trying to outsource to an individual and not a system like an Amazon or a USANA for your vitamins, if you're trying to outsource to a person and you're not really getting the results that you want, you're not being really clear. So, another thing that you could do, you could write down is, create much clearer guidelines for X, Y, and Z to take over X, Y, and Z. So another real life example is going ahead and, having me take the time to sit down and create a checklist for our cleaning lady that comes to clean our motorcycle shop, and also she cleans our home, and writing down exactly what I expected from her, down to wipe down windows, take out all of trash cans, things that you would expect that would get done. But it's almost to the point where it's unfair to hold someone else accountable if you don't have a way for them to measure what they're supposed to be accountable against. So that's another way to kind of, think of a clutter that is taking up your life and taking up your time and taking up valuable resources that there's no need for it. So the second thing that I learned with Irma and having to take a blowtorch to my calendar is I didn't know how to enjoy my downtime. So if you don't listen to anything else, this is probably my biggest takeaway. I didn't understand how to enjoy downtime. I didn't understand, or it really didn't sink in deeply that, when I had put all these systems in place and I have built processes and I've got people on the right path so that things are being outsourced, obviously the whole goal is so that you're not doing everything and therefore you have a lot more free time. Well, I was listening to this amazing podcast, and again, I'll link it up in the show notes over at margaretstevens.co. And it was an amazing podcast. It's with Amy Porterfield, and she was talking with Michael Hyatt. And Michael Hyatt was talking roughly around the same concept. And to kind of take a 45-minute podcast and turn it into 30 seconds, it was, you need to consciously take some time and not only build up morning routines and evening routines that bring you joy, which we all have heard that, but you also need to take it a step further, and you need to, whether you need to write it down so it's physical and tangible, but you need to get it out of your head some way, and you need to think of the activities that you wish you did more of, and start learning how to put them into your day because you've freed up all this time with either outsourcing or automation or, delegating. So that was something that I learned, and again, Irma really, like I said, took me out of my everyday life, even though I was still at home, so that I was forced to look at where am I, just creating this endless to-do list, this endless clutter, because the only way I feel valued is if I'm getting something done. When in reality, I needed to shift my perspective, and I would encourage you to shift your perspective and to go ahead and say, okay, I'm a bomb-ass bitch or bomb-ass man, and I have cleared up X, Y, and Z off my plates, and that means I've got anywhere from a half an hour to a couple of hours free, additional, every single night. What ways can I go ahead and reinvest in that time so that it is going to help me up level? And that's the other thing too. I really believe, especially for myself, I love giving, real life examples. I believe the reason why I never focused on implementing things that would go ahead and, bring me joy and kind of take up the space that I had purposefully cleared out is because I didn't understand the correlation of creating more joy and self-care in my life and up leveling every time. And I can't stress this enough. Every time you learn how to take care of yourself at a deeper level, not only are you going to be happier, but you're going to be happier with your partner. You're going to be happier with your coworkers. You're going to be happier with any customers that you're interacting, whether it's for your business or a company you work for. And being happier all around is going to mean that you're less stressed out. That means you're going to get colds less often. That means you're going to binge eat less often. And there's this giant ripple effect. There's this giant butterfly effect of being happier so that, it affects other parts of your life. So I would encourage you to look at self-care as a way to up level. It's a way to get bonus points in your life or brownie points, or, if you're a gamer, you're getting like a free, secret bonus pack that no one else is getting. And when you start to correlate self-care with up leveling, then your perspective changes. So here's another real life example. I have taken it upon myself to look at my calendar and say, okay, I've cleared up enough time in my calendar where I can go ahead and start really putting in little chunks of time, 45 minutes, 2 hours here, 30 minutes there, of time that I want to dedicate solely to self-care. Now, I want you to take it a step further. I don't want you to just say, yeah, I'm going to do self-care today, woohoo, because that's not going to work. I've done it, so I'm speaking from experience. If you are a type A overachiever, or you just want to get some shit done, and you have any type of personality like that, then you're going to need some type of conscious list for you to go ahead and reference. Okay, what does self-care mean to me? So that when that Tuesday night comes or that Thursday night comes, and you go ahead and say, okay, 8:30 self-care time. You're not like, well, what do I do? You don't stop. You're not going to, not really think of something to do, or you're going to kind of think of some bullshit thing to do, like, oh, it's self-care time. Self-care means putting laundry away. Self-care does not mean putting laundry away. For the love of God, laundry and dishes do not count as self-care. So here's some practical examples of self-care for you that you could use to plug into those time slots that you've built into your week that are dedicated to self-care. Now, I encourage you, just like we did for the first exercise, take this and make it your own. But because I love examples, here's some examples of self-care. So self-care can mean exercising. It can mean, and if you're doing exercising, if you love to run, if you love to do yoga, if you like to try out a different exercise DVD, if you go to a studio for a class, that can be self-care. Another example of self-care could be walking, enjoying nature, going out to the park. Another example of self-care, and let me rephrase this really quick or put a little asterisk. When I look at self-care, I always try and look at what other self-care options that I have in my life that are existing that are free. Because I don't want self-care to be always tied to money. I think it's important to kind of change it up a little bit as time goes on. But self-care should not be this barrier of, well, I can't get a mani-pedi, therefore I can't have self-care. So self-care could be an example of taking the time to paint your nails, or it could take it could be an example of taking the time to take a luscious tub bath with all this fragrance and these balms and all of that, maybe some Epsom salt in there, things that make you internally sigh and relax, and your shoulders go down and your back straightens up and you just feel like you can take on the world. You are king shit. That is what you're trying to aim for when you do a self-care, either time slot or night or however you figure it out in your calendar. That's the feeling you're trying to go after. So like I said, I've given you some examples. Let me read some more. Another example of self-care could be trying out a different recipe. So if your desire really is to become this really awesome cook, take, that time and say, okay, I'm going to try this little bit more advanced recipe, but I'm going to enjoy it. I've got the time in my calendar to not feel rushed. I can measure everything out properly. I can not multitask while I'm cooking. I can focus solely on the joyous act of cooking, which is something I've deeply desired to do. I now have 100% mental clarity and space and brain power to focus on what I'm going to enjoy. So that's an example of self-care. And again, the whole point is to be enjoying this and to build it into your calendar. And if you've just jumped in, make sure you jump back to the beginning of the video, because in the beginning of the video we are talking about taking a blowtorch to self-care, to your calendar to make room for the things that are more important in your life. So the third thing I want to talk about tonight is you need to look at this from a bigger picture. So we've kind of looked at it from the ground level, and then we looked at it from a level up. And now I want you to look at it from up here, that 20, 30, 50,000 foot view. And the entire point of taking the blowtorch to your calendar and focusing on your self-care and all the examples I've given you is to help you start understanding at a soulful level what is important to you. What is, going to move you forward in life, but joyfully move you forward. It's not something to, it's not going to be something that you want to move forward because you are, needing to check off that goal list. You're needing to check off something on the bucket list, or you've got, some internal dare that, oh, I can't do this. Let me prove them wrong. That is not the mentality that we are going after. We are going after care and joy and love and a vibration of radiance that is going to be coming from the inside out, so that when you are going about your day, you're going to be taking this wherever you go. So I want you to really look at what's important. And to be honest, that was probably the first thing that Irma taught me, was I needed to focus more on what was important, and I needed to understand that self-care could be important. I needed to understand that having really clear systems in place for the people that work with me and help my life run better is really important. I needed to understand how to pack a hurricane bag for me, my animals, and the hubby in less than 20 minutes, because honestly, you really don't need much more than that, and that's including the important documentation, which that'll be another episode on how to prep a hurricane bag. And if you have any other episode recommendations, please put them in the comments. But I want you to use this time to reflect and take a step back and say, okay, what is really important? If I had a crisis, which Irma could have been a crisis for us. If I have a crisis come into my life and it just cleans the slate, whether that was good or bad, what am I going to do to rebuild my life? What other options am I going to get to, start over? And a really good perspective that a lot of people get to this level from is if they have some type of terminal illness or some severe illness. So I've heard a lot of conversations like this from cancer patients. They're like, wow, I feel like I got a second chance. Or someone that had something severely life-altering to them, a horrible car accident or something like that, where they're like, oh my God, I feel like I have a second chance. I don't want to screw this shit up. I need to get rid of the bullshit and move forward, because this is precious time and I don't know when it's going to end. So that is the perspective that I want you to have when you're looking at what's important in your life. But I don't want you to have a humongous crisis, like cancer or a horrific car accident or losing a loved one to get there. So let me try and save you a step or three so that you can start building that same type of life without having, like I said, a natural disaster come in and wipe the slate clean for you. So looking at what's important. Again, as you've known throughout this entire video, I love, love, love examples. So here's an example for you of looking at what's important. What's important for me is self-care. What's important for me is being a really great boss and understanding how can I make things easier for my employees? How can I make things easier for my customers? What's important to me is spending a ton of time with the hubby and learning how to sit still. And when I mean spend time with him, that doesn't mean be in the same household and doing laundry while he's watching TV. That means both of us sitting on the couch, snuggling, and just having a great time. So another thing that's important to me is taking the time that I've built into my calendar to do videos like this, to get these conversations that I'm having behind the scenes with my girlfriends and my mastermind members and classes, and really taking it on a broader level so that you can have the same conversation with me. And that is something that is important to me. So those are some really tangible examples of what is important to me. And I want you to go ahead and write down a couple of things that are really important to you. So to recap, some of the exercises I gave you for today is to write down a couple of examples of things that are cluttering your calendar, things that are cluttering your life. That could be obligations, that could be stories you tell yourself, that could be a really crappy way of outsourcing. The second exercise is to understand how to enjoy downtime and to take it a step further, because I love taking things a step further. Writing down a specific list of things that you consider self-care that are mostly free, like going to the park with your kids or spending time with your animals or your family, things like that. And then the last exercise for today is to go ahead and look at really what's important to you and start slowly. And I'm not saying do drastic changes, because I want something for you to be tangible. I want it to be lasting. But start taking those items that are really, really important to you and making it a non-negotiable on your calendar, so that you can say, yes, family time is really important to me, and it is so important that 3 nights a week I do nothing but spend time with my family. So that's a tangible example. Now, I want to hear from you in the comments below. I want to hear if you had a blowtorch taken to your calendar, taken to your life, and you got a fresh slate. What would your life look like? What are you going to build in return? What are you going to, create out of those ashes of that blowtorch, so that you can build a life that lights you up and brings you joy and makes you just glow from the inside out? I want to hear what that looks like for you in the comments below. And if you have any questions on anything I was talking about, please feel free to either leave a comment below and I will gladly have this conversation with you, or if you feel it's too personal, please send me a message. I would just love to chit chat with you and kind of help you take a blowtorch to your calendar without having a hurricane attached to it. All right, I will talk to you guys later. Bye.